Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Territory Talk Podcast, the official podcast of the Florida Panthers, presented as always by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. Doug Plagens, Jameson Olive here with you as always, another off-season edition. And, well, last episode we went through the top 6 on the Panthers' 24-25 scoring leaders list. And here on this edition, we're going to go through recapping the rest of the lineup. And safe to say, Jameson, everybody had a good year last year, especially those that finished the season with the Panthers and were involved with the second straight Stanley Cup victory. But we're going to go through the rest of the lineup here. Lots to get to on this edition of the Territory Talk Podcast, kind of continuing our recap editions before eventually, and we will eventually, before too long, turn the page to somewhat of a preview series of podcasts leading up to next season. But going back through the rest of the lineup, we're going to get to that here in just a moment. Congratulations, Matthew Tkachuk. His wedding as well.
Matthew and Ellie. I now know what it feels like to be like from England and see a royal wedding. That's what it felt like. It's the Panthers.
There's a lot going on there. Yes.
Yes. Not just because it's the Tkachuks and it's Matthew and Ellie who are so good to us at all times, but just because the guest list you saw on Instagram and things like that. You saw Ryan Lomberg. You saw Brandon Montour. You saw
who's who?
Nick Cousins. And then you saw obviously so many guys from this year's team as well.
There's some work being done.
I don't know how much fans can hear that, but Doug and I are running around trying to find places to record Territory Talk. We've done the Sin Bin, we've done the Iceplex, but now we're in the cold zone, and there's lots of construction going on here at Amerant Bank Arena, and we're right in the thick of it. We'll get some construction guys to hop on as our next guest, maybe. But no, getting back to it,
building a better podcast for you. That's what we're doing. That's what we do in the off season, and we have a short off season, so we got to get on it quickly.
Yes, Doug and I have to grab a hammer here at some point and start helping out. But no, you talk about the wedding and who was there, and it's just so cool because it really does all tie back to what Ryan Lomberg said before Game 7 2 years ago, that together forever after this win, and it really feels like they are. It's such a tight group, especially that group from 2 years ago. So that was awesome to see, and then Matthew, of course, gets his cup day right after. A lot of the same things he did, last year. Rarely do you get to double dip your cup day, but he got to go back to the Children's Hospital, back to the fire department. Had that great photo of him in the cup in jail for a little bit, which was funny. But no, just a big congrats to them. A couple Panther weddings. Sam Bennett's was right before
Not too long ago. Yep, congratulations to him and his family as well.
Josh Mahura's was like the day before Matthew Tkachuk's, and I saw that Brandon Montour made it to both, so a lot of travel for him.
Congratulations to him and his family as well.
A lot going on here,
yes.
A lot of Panther weddings. But no, just huge congrats, awesome. And like you said, a guy we talked about, obviously, on the last episode, given all the points he had last season. But now we're getting down to, you and I called them kind of the meat and potatoes guys, but the Panthers comparatively have the fewest potatoes in the league, and the potatoes they do have are really fancy potatoes.
It's a low-carb option.
They have no just like straight out of the ground, like Idaho Gold potatoes. These are all really nice. Like fine
everything fits.
Potatoes.
Everything fits so well. None of this was just thrown together haphazardly.
Well, it's funny, too. I was watching, obviously, today as we're recording, July 22nd is the anniversary of the Matthew Tkachuk trade. Things have gone pretty well since then.
3-year anniversary.
Yeah, things have gone pretty well since then. 3 trips to the finals, 2 Stanley Cups. Just looking at the numbers, too, I pulled them up for fun, but 254 points in 211 games. That's the 15th most in the NHL in that stretch, factoring in he also missed some time with injuries. And then in the playoffs, 69 points, 25 goals, 44 assists in 67 playoff games, most by anyone not in an Edmonton Oilers jersey in that stretch. Just been better than advertised. Huge part of, obviously, the whole turnaround here. But so much of the stuff he said in that press conference ended up being, like, so prophetic. He was basically saying, you just win the regular season, you get there, every guy plays hard, you get some good goaltending, you play in your face hockey, you make the other teams uncomfortable, and you see how it goes. And that's what they've been doing. It's been working. So, I think his famous line there was, too, is I'm here to be the last team standing, and now they've done that twice.
I think whenever a big deal happens like that, whenever any kind of big shakeup happens like that, you have to say the right things. Yeah. And everybody generally in those situations does say the right things because there's always a feeling of a fresh start and there always is excitement to it. But as we've come to know, when Matthew Tkachuk says something, he means it. He doesn't just go out to deliver lip service. He goes out to say what's on his mind. Mm-hmm. There's something behind it. There's meaning behind it. And if he says he's going to do something, we've seen now the proof's in the pudding. He delivers on it. Has there ever been an introductory press conference where more of the message was delivered on than that one right there from Matthew Tkachuk 3 years ago today.
And just the swagger it takes.
Well, not 3 years ago today. I'd say about, 2 years and 362 days ago would have been the introductory press conference, something like that.
I think it was like July 25th or something. But no, for him to come in here, and I know the Panthers are obviously coming off of the President's Trophy year, but to come here and sit at that podium and basically talk about winning championships with the top 5 most forlorn franchises, I think, in NHL history, just in terms of success and what they've had in the roughly 30 years they had before Matthew Tkachuk got here. To say all that and kind of come in and kind of immediately kind of have the organization stick its chest out after a lot of years of not doing that, like we said, change the whole thing, change the culture game. But Doug, cool anniversary, but as we go along here, like Matthew Tkachuk said in that press conference, it takes everyone. It takes a lot of guys. He complimented the guys that already were here, and of course some guys have come in since then have really helped out. But going back to this last season, the last guy we talked about was Anton Lundell. So we've just been going down the scoring list here a little bit. So after Anton, we had Evan Rodrigues, Doug. And Evan Rodrigues, going back to last year, 32 points in 82 games, the only Panther to play in 82 regular season games last year. Iron Rod. Never missed a game, was always out there. But then you go to the playoffs, and just like it was 2 years ago when they won their first cup, he was lights out in the playoffs once again. 15 points in 21 playoff games, 13 assists. And what sticks out to me when I look back at Roddy's season was the Hurricane series, so the ECF. I think it was 3 straight games he had with 2 assists. He was just dishing the biscuit like crazy, still waiting for that first goal, but just racking up the numbers, racking up the apples. And just another guy where, he's just such an interesting player because so few guys can do what he does, where you play on the fourth line one game, the next game you're on the top line with Alexander Barkov, and you can do them both seamlessly. You can go from playing 11 minutes a night to 18 minutes a night and not skip a beat. And I feel like the Panthers, a guy we'll talk about here in a minute, Mackie Samoskevich, I feel like they're kind of molding him in that same mold of a kind of plug-and-play type guy, but a very high-skilled plug-and-play type guy. But Evan Rodrigues, once again, Doug, just gives you everything you want from a guy like that.
He can play up and down the lineup. He can defend. He can do anything that you ask of him. And I think it's something that you can't overlook, and you touched on it there, but to not have your rhythm disrupted when you go from maybe playing first line or top 6 minutes one night to having your minutes reduced but still seeing power play time on another night, and being willing to do that and adjust night to night and do it with not only a smile on your face but complete professionalism, and then to just bring it in the playoffs the way that he has continued to these last couple of years. You go back to the 24 Cup final. I know we're not talking about that, but you can make the case he was the Panthers' best player in the 24 Cup final. And then you mentioned it again, his numbers in this playoff run. He's been a huge asset to this team, no question about it. And on top of that, one of our favorite guys to talk to, whether it be pregame, postgame, you always know you're going to get a good assessment of everything, and you're going to get a good pulse of everything when you talk to Evan Rodrigues.
And you know what? He got 1 Selke vote this year, and when I told him that, he was thrilled. Big day. He deserves it, though. It's because there are a lot of guys in the National Hockey League. I know I'm stating the obvious here, but not everybody gets a Selke vote. No.
And to get one, that's pretty cool. He's always got that.
Like I said, he plays with the type of effort that deserves a Selke vote from time to time. But like I said, Mr. Consistently in a world of inconsistency. Basically, his life, his day-to-day is very inconsistent. You never know what he's going to be doing, but he's always the same player no matter what he's doing. So just a great value player for the Panthers. And moving on, a guy I mentioned that I feel like just based on his first rookie season here, his first full season in the NHL, Mackie Samoskevich, I feel like could be an Evan Rodrigues type player someday. Maybe even more just with the shot he has and his goal-scoring potential, but just in terms of a guy that I feel like can play anywhere. But you go back to this year, 31 points in 72 games, 15 goals, 8th among NHL rookies, only 22 years old still, played in 4 playoff games. I talked to him at Stanley Cup Final Media Day in Edmonton, and he was talking just about how valuable those games were, how valuable the situation is. Because so many guys, when you're not playing, especially in the playoffs, can kind of just be sad and kind of get out of it and kind of get in a little bit of a funk. Mackie never did that. He was learning. He was having a great time. And you saw after the Panthers won with him on the ice, skating the cup around, he just relished the moment of being part of this team so much. And I think he also, like us, sees the road ahead and sees how promising it is for himself, and also at the same time knows he's still putting in work to get there. And I think this season, from a mental perspective, from a physical perspective, from an experience perspective, Mackie just leaps and bounds, improved every single game. And there was multiple games this year where he led the Panthers in hits, which is so impressive for a guy that's known as a goal scorer, that's, not the biggest guy in the world, but isn't afraid to do that. Great forechecking. Seems to fit perfectly with what the Panthers are trying to do these days.
You could see he was mature beyond his years from the moment he was drafted, but that was on full display when you saw the way that last season went for him. A lot of guys that grow up, go through the ranks, leaned on for offense. Everywhere he's ever been, he's been counted on to produce numbers. He plays the early part of last season on the fourth line, learned a lot of valuable lessons to his game. We've talked a lot about that, but showed that scoring upside. I think there's 25, 30, 35 goal a year potential in him down the road. The sky truly is the limit for the former first-round pick, but Mackie really evolved his game last season, and you saw the hockey smarts too, the ability to fit in and play in a lot of different situations, and the maturity, as you mentioned. You know, as the playoffs went along, the Panthers were winning. They got into a groove. Lineup-wise, things just fell into a certain place, and there wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room there. Brad Marchand was added to the mix. That fourth line just really found a groove, and I think we agree with Paul Maurice on that. Once Nosek and Greer and Gadjovich got going there during the Toronto series, you just couldn't break those guys up, and it became a little bit of a numbers game. But you saw Mackie's maturity on full display throughout the run. Kept himself ready to go, got into some playoff games, and again, 72 games last season, 15 goals, and you figure that he's only going to build on it from there. Still easy to forget how young this guy truly is, and we mentioned it last week, mention it again. Bill Zito has only made 2 first-round picks as the Panthers general manager, but looks like he's made them count with Anton Lundell and Mackie Samoskevich back in 20 and 21.
It's the fact that he nailed both picks, but it's also, you just know over the last how many years, 3-4 years, every time a team calls, they probably want either Anton Lundell or Mackie Samoskevich. And the Panthers have wisely held on to both guys, and look how it's turned out.
And a lot of teams had opportunities to pick both guys and didn't. The Panthers, thankful that they have them.
And, I go to Mackie again, too, and, 5 game-winning goals, tied with Carter for the most on the team. He's already got that clutch gene, and I think that is because he is so laid back, and he's also laid back on the ice. He's got swagger, but I've never seen him, nervous.
No, you can
tense.
tell he knows the situation he's in, and he knows what kind of resources are around him, and he knows what he can learn from watching the players around him. Very rare situation for a guy at his age to come into a lineup like this where he's not leaned on night to night. A lot of these first-round picks, they find their way into the lineup, and the team's counting on them right away to go out there and help them win hockey games. For the Panthers, Mackie can help them win hockey games, but he's not shouldering the weight of every win, every loss. He's not the guy that is being leaned on to, hey, if you don't score, our chances of winning aren't going to be good. He's not in that situation, so it's a great place to learn, and you can tell he realizes that.
And the funny thing about him is going back to the numbers a little bit here. So you look at a guy like Logan Stankoven, same age, was the crown jewel of the Mikko Rantanen trade, going from Dallas to Carolina. Had a great playoff series against the Panther, one of their more effective
He's the
forwards.
real deal, yep, he's a good player.
But 14 goals in 78 games in the regular season, 1 less than Mackie. And I look at them both as players, both kind of similar size. I think Stankoven's actually a little bit smaller. But to me, the gap between those two players, from what I see right now, is very slim. Yet one guy is, like you said, not really needed to be the man for the Panthers. Far from it. There's so many forwards on this team where you look at Stankoven, and now he's probably a top 4 forward, maybe 4 or 5 for the Hurricanes. And
he's a top 2 line guy. Yeah,
it just wouldn't surprise me if 5 years from now, Mackie's the more productive, better player. Just because looking at paper, looking at both of them, but one guy right now, because of situations, is considered just a bigger name. Just because of the trades he's been involved in and the role he has in Carolina now. But
he made that splash early with Dallas, and people got to know who he was pretty quickly. And he's a smaller guy.
Yeah.
Logan Stankoven's a smaller guy, and I think a lot of people tend to notice that, and then essentially pull for the underdog kind of thing with Logan Stankoven. I think when he came in.
But you look at what the Panthers have locked up now. You obviously have Bennett for 8 years. You have Chucky for 5 more years after this, probably more after that. But right now on paper, 5 years. But we saw briefly Samo with those 2 guys in the second line, and even if it's 2 years from now, if he gets 82 games with those guys, his numbers are going to be through the roof. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, he signed his 1-year extension this offseason. It's still going to be an RFA next year. Samo's here for a long time, and a guy that I think you and I are both really excited to see. Kind of like Lundy. Don't know what he's going to look like in 5 years, but it's going to be awesome, and I'm excited to see it.
And the progression can be gradual. It doesn't have to be overnight because of the luxury this team has in terms of the overall lineup.
Doug, next guy, pop quiz. Who led the Panthers in shorthanded minutes in the playoffs? Among forwards.
Shorthanded minutes in the playoffs.
We're talking forwards here.
Was it Eetu Luostarinen?
It was Eetu Luostarinen. About 6 more than Sasha Barkov. 51 minutes and 3 seconds. So you go to Lusty, and we've been
leading the team in syllables.
We've been a part of Etu's Army for a while here. Etu Nation. There's Etu's Army and Lusty Nation. We've been a part of both for a while, card-carrying members. A guy that's gotten better every year since he's been here. But you go to the regular season, 24 points in 80 games. But then you go to the playoffs, 19 points in 23 games. Plus minus through the roof. Like I said, really carrying a heavy load on the penalty kill with all those minutes he was racking up. So good, especially with, Lundy and Marchie in the playoffs. But Doug, another guy I think, there's times in the past couple of years where we've seen him on the second line. Remember, they put him even on the first line for a little bit with Barkey back in the day. We've seen him at center. We've seen him at wing. We've seen him do a lot of things over the years, but he just strikes me as a guy now where we know how good he is. He's a playoff dog per 60 through the roof. But even in the regular season, I just feel like he could be a 20-goal, 20-assist guy, even on the third line with how dynamic the Panthers are moving forward. But come playoff time, there's few players that I want more than Eetu, just because I know he's done it so many times in the playoffs. He's perfect as a middle six guy in the playoffs for the Panthers, and a guy that, like I said, does a lot of things, maybe an unsung hero at times, especially with his 2 line mates and the spotlight they get, but just such a core important piece for the Panthers.
And he's a large guy. You stand next to him. Yeah. He's a big guy, and he's tough to move off the puck. And I think similar to what we've heard Paul Maurice say in regards to Alexander Barkov, you could tell as he's matured in his game and as he's gotten older here, and by no means is he an old player, but he's really learned how to use his body and use his body positioning, and it's made him that much more difficult to play against, and it's made him that much more productive come playoff time. And Jameson, we've mentioned it a handful of times. In the Paul Maurice era, there's only one playoff series that the Panthers have not won. And I'm not saying it's the only reason that Vegas won the Cup in 23, but Eetu Luostarinen didn't play at all in that Stanley Cup final. He was injured in the last game of the Eastern Conference final against Carolina that year when he blocked that shot, missed that Cup final. That's the only playoff series in the Paul Maurice era that the Panthers have not won. It was the one that they didn't have Eetu Luostarinen at all for. So
it's one of my favorite stats, by the way, is the Panthers just don't lose with Eetu.
With Eetu Luostarinen out there, Panthers are a pretty safe bet to at least be in the game. And again, with Eetu Luostarinen playing with Anton Lundell and Brad Marchand, that line once again was, and we predicted it, we called it, and it makes you wonder, do other teams, do other organizations in their game planning, in their pre-scouting, do they go into it saying, we got to find out something to do, something we can do about neutralizing this third line because we don't have anything we can throw at that. And it's proven time and time again to be what's helped push the Panthers over the top in a playoff series. Once again, that was the case, and Eetu Luostarinen was a huge part of it. And I've never been a head coach in the National Hockey League or at any level of hockey, but I've got to think that Eetu Luostarinen is exactly what a coach anywhere would want. A guy that does all the little things and isn't at all concerned about his personal numbers or anything like that. He will do anything that is asked of him to go out and help the team win.
Yeah, and I just looking at, we talk about the last 2 years, the 2 cups. Panthers' penalty kill has been right at the center of that. Paul Maurice talks about all the time. 3 years ago when they lost to Vegas, penalty kill was not good, yet they still made it that far. That was the area they wanted to improve. It's been fantastic these last 2 years, but this last playoffs in particular, 86.4%. Tops in the NHL in the playoffs this last year. Obviously, going up against some real powerhouse, power plays in Toronto, and even Carolina's got some, of course, big weapons. But obviously, the Oilers in the final being the biggest beast. But they did a great job, and even Eetu's numbers in the final: 6 points in 6 games, 1 goal, 5 assists in the Stanley Cup final this past year. Look at the minutes too, almost 18 minutes a night. That's not usually you hear 18 minutes a night in the Stanley Cup final, you think top 6 superstar type players. That's just a regular night for Eetu. And that just, once again, I think Eetu, there's so many players that kind of showcase just the depth of the Panthers and kind of how spread out everything is. Maybe Eetu is the core player of that. He's kind of right in the middle of all that depth, I think. Just a fascinating player.
You could tell that across the hockey world, he was getting talked about more than ever during that playoff run. You could tell
Gus 2 years ago.
People finally took notice of how good this guy is across the continent, not just down here in South Florida among Panthers fans and in our sphere here in our silo, but elsewhere people were taking note of how good Eetu Luostarinen is.
Next up, Doug, we have Jesper Boqvist.
Oh, the answer is yes, per Boqvist.
But no, he's a guy where another depth guy and another great just kind of offseason pickup. The Panthers did not have a lot of money to spend this past offseason. They get a guy like Jesper Boqvist, and I think, once again, a guy that just fit kind of perfectly with this team. You look at the numbers that he put up. I got him right here. 23 points in 78 games, 12 goals in the regular season. That's a career high. Gave you about 13 minutes of ice time a night. Just a great find. A guy that played up and down the lineup, kind of like Erod does, and a guy where come playoff time was a great plug-and-play guy. I mean, 5 points in 13 playoff games, but, Doug, when I look back at Jesper Boqvist this year, I think it's a guy you and I both just enjoyed getting to know, too. Just a great guy. But Eastern Conference Final, Game 3, he's been scratched for several games before that. He comes in, he gives you a goal and 2 assists and a 6-2 win, and that one goal he had, just the slice and dice beauty. Like, suddenly you're pulling Connor McDavid off your bench, just in terms of how that goal looks. Obviously, he's not Connor McDavid, but a guy that can do that sitting on your bench. He comes off your bench. He gives you that goal and 2 assists and a win in the Eastern Conference Final. So many teams just can't do that, Doug. So once again, another guy that showcases Florida's depth, and a guy that, signed a 2-year extension back in March. He's going to be a depth player here for a while. A guy that could play every game or every other week, and he's still giving you the same production, and a guy that, just the speed, the skill, the forechecking fits perfectly here with the Panthers.
Another reason why I have to assume that when the folks who vote for General Manager of the Year were putting together their votes, I think they lost their notes or something, because all you have to do is look, this is another signing. Not only bringing Jesper in for last season and then seeing what he did to help this team win, but then locking him up again on a nice contract moving forward. So to lock in a guy with some cost certainty who can help your team in a lot of different ways. You can, similarly to how we've already talked about Evan Rodrigues, for example, and what Mackie Samoskevich brings to the table in the way that you can play Jesper up and down the lineup. He can give you minutes on the penalty kill if you need him there. He's got speed. He has some nose for the net. We saw the big goal he scored there in the playoffs that you touched on. He was a really helpful player for this team. And when so many of the other teams that even in the playoffs, good teams, when they have somebody go out of the lineup for whatever the reason is, and they have to call on one of the scratches, if you will, sometimes you feel like they're just trying to, okay, what's going to work? Because we don't really care for any of these options, but we have to play somebody. With the Panthers, that's not the case. With the Panthers, you have to call them serviceable players out of the lineup in the playoffs. That's almost insulting to just say they're serviceable. You have good players out of the lineup that on a lot of nights would be in the lineup that played over 70 games during the regular season. Jesper Boqvist was another guy that was able to come in as kind of a plug and play throughout the playoffs and give the Panthers, again, an understatement saying he gave them quality minutes.
In the Stanley Cup Final, if we were to call up the Edmonton Oilers and say, do you want Jesper Boqvist in your top 6? He's on our bench right now. They take him in their top 6 in the Stanley Cup Final.
The Panthers' 3 forward scratches would have been Edmonton's 4th line.
Yeah.
Every night.
And even better, Jesper could have played with Leon Draisaitl on one of those spots.
Absolutely.
They probably would have wanted him there.
They would have been in the lineups of the teams the Panthers were playing in the playoffs.
It's crazy. But yeah, another guy we're happy is here for a long time. And Doug, as we move down, we got a couple more left. This next one, I'm not doing individually. This next one is basically the playoff 4th line. It's AJ Greer, Tomas Nosek, Jonah Gadjovich, because Paul Maurice said it time and time again, each player individually is fine, but the sum of the parts with those guys is just so powerful.
Oh, when he brought him back in for Game 3 against Toronto, he said if I was bringing one in, I had to bring the whole unit in.
It's the family plan.
Yep.
You get a discount.
Yep.
But, you look at what the Panthers did the year before, and that was their one of the biggest things coming into this season they had to do is basically remake their entire 4th line. Some crashing and banging. That's the 4th line back there.
Yes, that's very appropriate.
If fans can hear that. A little
that was AJ Greer.
Coming from the top rope, but first, quickly looking at just some of the individual stuff for them. But AJ Greer comes in 17 points, 6 goals, 11 assists, team high 222 hits. Tomas Nosek did what he was supposed to do, gave you some points, won I believe almost 52% of his faceoffs, and Jonah Gadjovich 21.46 hits per 60 minutes, tops on the team, and also Mr. Just the elite fighter, the elite enforcer on this team. He had a lot of big brawls this year that were all fun to watch. But you put them all together, Doug. And those are three guys that, weren't always in the lineup, especially in the playoffs. Obviously, we know they came out, but guys that, when they were in the lineup were always making an impact. And I think an underrated line in terms of their defense. I went to some of the advanced numbers here, and not even the advanced numbers. They're somewhat surface level, but numbers that don't get talked about enough. But, at 5-on-5 during the regular season, those guys spent 193 minutes and 40 seconds together, only 5 goals against. Far from liabilities. They were out there making an impact every single time. Forechecking, throwing the body, bruising up the other team, letting the other lines come out right after. They were doing their job to a T, which you love to see. But then in the playoffs, Doug, at 5-on-5, they led 4-1 in goals. And we saw that, obviously, with them coming back in for Game 3 of the Toronto series. Like you mentioned, Paul Maurice said, he still says to this day, that's the turning point for them in the entire playoffs. Not even that series. He says, that is the turning point in this second cup for the Panthers, was those 3 guys coming in. And I think when I look back at this season, one of the things that's going to stand out to me the most is, AJ Greer getting those goals. It's going to be Jonah Gadjovich doing the Gadjo face there with all the brawls against the Oilers in the final. And
became a T-shirt very quickly.
Yes, and it's going to be Tomas Nosek in tears hugging Paul Maurice after Game 6 here, after the Panthers won. And just that moment they shared. And, yeah, Doug, just a great fourth line. And typically the fourth line, like we said, especially if you want to be a good team in the NHL, typically your fourth line comes and goes because you can't overpay people. You can't pay people just for what they've done for you. But for the Panthers, they do have the luxury now, because you had Gadjovich and Greer on 2-year deals, and because Nosek wanted to come back and be here, you're bringing that fourth line back again next year. And it's going to be exciting to see what they do again, because now you know exactly what you're going to get from those guys. And just like some of the other guys we talked about, come Game 1 of the playoffs, you know what you're getting from everybody.
I have the privilege of talking hockey with Bill Lindsay a lot, as people know,
yes.
And he could illustrate this better than I can, but it's a topic that we've discussed a lot because Billy has an affinity for fourth lines and for the way that they go about their business, the way that a good fourth line goes about their business, because Billy will be the first to tell you that he spent a lot of time playing fourth line. He spent a lot of time killing penalties and doing dirty work throughout his career like that. And the way that those guys play, the little things that they do and the pride they take in it, and the way that Paul Maurice trusted them, they could be caught out there against a top line, and you don't view it as them getting caught out against them because they could still give you a productive shift. But the way that group has continued to go about its business, little things like winning the faceoff, getting a puck out so that you can pin the other team in its own end, force their goalie to freeze the puck so then you get an offensive end draw with your top line on the ice. Little things like that add up. There's a lot of that this year. Yes, little things like that add up over the course of a hockey game, and they help wear teams out. The other thing that with that group, they're leaned on. They're leaned on for real responsibility, and and Billy's talked about this a lot. He said if you're a fourth line guy, and you get into a rhythm, you feel like you're part of it. And that's how it's been with this Panthers team the last couple of years. It's never been a situation like we've seen. I'm not going to name names, but you know what teams we're talking about. Teams where when the fourth line goes out there, and in some cases even when the third line goes out there, their game plan is just cross your fingers and hope they don't give something up so you can get the big dogs back on the ice. That's not how this Panthers team has been constructed. Another reason Bill Zito should have won GM of the Year at least 2 or 3 times in the last handful of years. And that's not how you go about winning Stanley Cups. You need to have a method and a proper construction to your roster, and that's what this Panthers team has. It has a fourth line that can go out and help win you games, and that's what that unit did.
And let's not forget, too, all 3 guys are also more skilled than you think. They're more skilled than your average fourth liner. Paul Maurice always talks about Gadjovich being a 40-goal scorer in juniors. Greer's shown off some hands and some real elite skills around the net, and Nosek, we know what he can do, but even Nosek from a defensive perspective, there was times, the Panthers had those injuries where he was up in the top 6.
And he killed penalties too.
He killed penalties up, but it got up in the top 6 just to kind of bring a little more defensive element to the top 6 at times in the playoffs, and the Panthers had leads. So they can do a lot of things, but like you said, more than anything, that's a line that's so respected and loved in the locker room, and that's just kind of how things work here with the Panthers. Every guy is pulling the rope in the same direction. Every guy respects what the other guys are doing. I mean, when Gadjo has a big hit, that gets as big a cheer on the bench as, when Chucky gets a big goal. And it's just great to see. I mean, there was one play, I forget which round it was in, but it was in the playoffs, where Gadjo had such a great effort play to keep the puck, to clear the puck out of the zone. And it was like the fourth line was pinned for a while, and Gadjo basically just has like a Herculean effort just to get the puck just over the line to get it out and get a change going. And I talked to a couple of guys about it afterward, and they were all just like, that was like, we were so fired up. That was everything for us. So, energy takes a lot of different forms. Momentum takes a lot of different forms. And for the Panthers, as we've said, I think more than most kind of run on vibes and energy and momentum, and every guy on that team brings it. But the fourth line in particular, Doug, just something about those guys and what they do for this group is really special.
Yeah, part of the identity. You talk about there are a lot of teams out there where, again, the fourth line gets on the ice. In some case, the whole bottom six gets on the ice. They're interchangeable. You don't really know who they are, and that team's game plan is just hope those guys don't mess it up, and then you wait for the big dogs to get back on the ice. There's a method to everything with this Panthers team. Every unit that steps onto the ice is a part of it. As Bill Lindsay often puts it, they're a part of it. They can get into a rhythm, and they can give you productive shifts. And again, you can't say enough about that team. The teams with the really cohesive fourth lines, those teams get identity from their fourth lines, and we saw that throughout the playoffs, and it truly was a turning point. You go back to Game 3 against Toronto. I know it got a little hairy in that game. It got a little dicey in that game, but ultimately I think that game ended up being the biggest turning point in the entire playoff run.
I agree, because like we said, the Panthers lose that game. They're down 3-0 to the Maple Leafs, and who knows what happens at that point. But speaking of that game, and speaking of, as we get to our last forward here that we're going to talk about, a guy that didn't do much in the regular season, 4 points in 10 regular season games, but he was playing a little injured.
Yeah, you might not have noticed him out there.
Might not have noticed him, but Brad Marchand.
He was pretty quiet during
the regular season, but comes into the playoffs, 20 points in the playoffs, 10 goals, 10 assists, plus 17 rating.
Guy just came in, ate a bunch of ice cream, and
3 game winners. Kind of that third line was already good, but really elevated that third line to a whole new level. When they were on the ice at 5-on-5, 13-4 advantage in goals for the Panthers in the playoffs, and that third line was out there. That third line, of course, being Brad Marchand, Anton Lundell, and Eetu Luostarinen. But a guy that I think was the ultimate luxury at the deadline. I don't think anyone saw it coming. I don't think anyone thought it would. No one had it mocked up. No one thought it would happen. I think the Panthers felt they would have been okay going forward. They could have found a way, but a guy that really just put everything over the top here for the Panthers, both on the ice, off the ice, everything. And a guy, Doug, that I think you and I both respected, of course, before he got here. And he's a guy that not everyone, but most had going to the Hall of Fame even before he got here. Now that he's got 2 cups, I think anyone who argues against that's insane. But a guy that I think once you see him up close, you'll learn a whole different side of Brad Marchand and kind of what makes him tick.
Yeah, we've had the good fortune here in South Florida to see a lot of players come through over the years who are in an elite tier, not just currently, but all time. And Brad Marchand, it didn't take long. And let's not forget, he was out with an injury when he was first acquired. Took a little bit of time before he did make his debut. But even before he made his debut at the team, and then especially once he got going, it didn't take long. As somebody who's been a fan of the game as long as I can remember, going back to my earliest memories, I just put on my fan of the game cap, and I'm sitting there saying, we are privileged to be able to watch this guy play and to watch this guy go about his business. It's a special player, but a special guy. And to see the way that he competed every night, we knew it because he was on the other end of what you could say was really the best must-see TV rivalry in the National Hockey League for a good 2-year span between the Panthers and the Bruins. We knew what kind of competitor he was, but to see him go about his work day to day, and then to see the way that he fit in with his new team so quickly, and the way that his teammates gravitated toward him, and the way that he was accepted by his new teammates so quickly, and the way that he showed up in the big games, which you knew that he would, but to see it firsthand like that, my goodness, like I said, as a fan of the game, I was absolutely blown away watching Brad Marchand play.
But even him coming here after spending a storied career in Boston, where you're the captain, and you show up here, and it's like, all right, you're gonna be on the third line, you're gonna be on the second power play unit. Here's 2 Finnish guys in their mid-20s. Get to know them. They're now your best friends. And he just says, okay, this is all great. I'm here. No ego whatsoever. And we saw how it worked out. And the relationship and chemistry he grew with Lusty and Lundy was special. His quote, Finnish phenoms, which of course we know Lundy thought was Finnish females and was very confusing. It's a great story back from the playoffs. But to see them come together was really special. And he said too, yes, he made them better, but man, they made him better. It was a really great relationship on the ice. But another kind of unheralded thing I would think about Marchand, and maybe not unheralded, but something that I think deserves more spotlight is the fact that, you go back to the Panthers 2 years ago, it was a silly team in a good way. It was a funny team. You had Montour and you had Lombo and you had Nick Cousins, and those are three of the loudest, funniest, keep things loose guys we've ever met. You agree there?
Yep.
They're in the Hall of Fame in that department.
Yep.
And you lose all three of those guys. And the Panthers still have a lot of great personalities in that room, but that was a big kind of chunk of the jokes and silliness gone. And I feel like Brad Marchand single-handedly brought back a lot of that. And the Panthers are always loose, but he kept things even looser for this team in the playoffs, just with the fun he was having and the Dairy Queen stuff. And even just, media matters, pressure matters, things like that. And the Panthers never really dealt with tough media or tough pressure because, one, things were typically never going too bad for them. But even when it was, people were more interested in the fun stuff that the Panthers were doing. I mean, you go to one locker room and it's Mitch Marner, do you think this is your last game in a Maple Leafs jersey? Perhaps?
Are you coming back?
What's going through your head out there? How's it? It's just tough dagger questions for tough guys and tough moments. And then you go to the Panthers locker room and it's, Brad, was it the Oreo blizzard or was it the cookie dough? What was the decision out there? And it's just like that. But those things were happening simultaneously. And even when things could have gone away from that stuff, the Panthers, particularly Brad Marchand, always found a way to keep it silly and keep that the story more than anything. No one in the Panthers ever took the ice with a negative story hang over their head or negative
The Leafs were
pressure.
talking about passengers, and
Yes.
the Panthers passengers were, how many people are going to Dairy Queen?
Was it 2 Ubers? Did you walk? Who booked them? That actually became a thing, though, because Nate Schmidt, for a little bit, was upset that no one knew he was the one footing the bill for the Dairy Queen, and that had to get out there. So there was some drama, I guess, with the Panthers and the DQ. I don't know. But that's the thing. Like, that stuff matters. It matters when you spend your whole day and you take the ice and everyone's laughing and having fun and you get out there and you just play hockey and it's great versus...
Like when George Costanza's girlfriend took credit for Elaine's big salad.
You had to get the big salad.
You had to get the big salad.
Exactly, though. But these things matter. So a guy that, like I said, total passenger in the regular season, but I guess made up for it in the playoffs. No, just an incredible all-time trade deadline pickup. Second in voting for Conn Smythe. Could have won it. Both him and Bennett had great arguments. But I don't think you're going to find a better trade deadline pickup production plus result than Brad Marchand in the past or in the future. If there is someone I'm missing that you can put up there with him, try, but I'm probably still got a better argument for Brad Marchand. But once again, Bill Zito, another thing to throw into his should have won GM of the Year cap award.
I think the people lost the notes. They lost their notes.
Well, I think it was 7 people that had him off the ballot. So,
which is beyond me. Let's be serious here.
Yeah, well, like we said, I think that's just 7 executives or GMs that have had too many emails or voicemails from ownership saying, well, Bill Zito did it. And them saying,
maybe they didn't watch. I mean, there's always that possibility.
Maybe. I don't know.
Didn't pay attention to the league the last 3 years.
But like I said, 20 years from now, it's going to be called the Bill Zito Award, and he will have never won it. But it will be named after him, and we'll take that. But yeah, Brad Marchand, 6 more years. Crazy. Fitting him in with Bennett and Ekblad. More wizardry from Bill Zito, who always gets credit here from Territory Talk.
I bet Barry Zito would have given him a GM of the Year award.
I'm just excited to see now a full season here. Just speaking of Barry Zito, once again, we were talking about the Tkachuk trade. And I was going back and reading some old tweets and some old stuff on Reddit, and one of them said, "Oh, they must have accidentally let Barry Zito run the Panthers to make a trade this bad." It worked out.
And Barry got a sigh, so Bill eventually has to get his GM of the Year award.
Yes, eventually he will. But he already, like I said, his trophy case is big enough and full enough at this point.
Yeah.
But, Doug, that's all the forwards we were going to go over, the full review. And I think there was one social post not too long ago on Instagram, and it was a player that needs to step up on each team this upcoming season. And for the Panthers, it said nobody. And that's true. Looking at these numbers, looking at kind of reviewing this past season for the Panthers, every forward here carried their weight. Every forward did a special job. Every forward played a key role in helping this team win the Stanley Cup. And it's just fun to look back at. And like I said, we're going to look back at the defensemen. We're going to look back at the goaltending here at some point. But, moving forward, it's just crazy how many of these guys are exactly right back here next year. Running it back.
It's an interesting one, and we're going to have plenty of time to preview this, but I guess the first initial thought, it's a team going into the next year where there isn't any, you're not concerned about anybody aging out. You're not concerned about, so many times when a team wins a championship in any sport, you look back and you think, oh, well, you had all these guys have career years at the same time, and there has to be some kind of regression to the mean. There's nothing like that. Like I said, there's nobody.
Yeah, no one went off.
There's nobody getting to be over the hill where you're concerned that could be a problem. There's no key departure where you're sitting there saying, oh, well, that guy not being there could cost them points in the standings or something like that. Sure, the Panthers had Nate Schmidt move on, for example, and players, but the Panthers have been able to fill the holes. I don't know that you've ever seen a team so equipped to just bring it back with the same group and have the ability to just look at it and say, okay, if we can go and do that again, we're going to have a good shot.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. It's just, once again, getting back there.
Yep.
Just doing enough to get back.
And I know games aren't played on paper, but I mentioned this in another media hit I did. Usually the roster on paper doesn't matter. The games aren't played on paper, but when the group on paper has already gotten the results that this one has, then yeah, the mix that's on paper, the recipe that's written down, that matters. That matters when it's already worked multiple times.
Yeah, and just for the upcoming season, I mean, there's a lot more seasons to come, but now is the time to be coming to Panthers games if you can get tickets. Every game's sold out, but if you can get tickets, come to a game, because you got 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on the ice, not counting Paul Maurice behind the bench, and probably Bill Zito someday up at the booth. So come see these guys. Come see Brad Marchand. Come see Alexander Barkov. Come see Matthew Tkachuk. And just get a feel for it. Sit every seat in the building. Sit behind the bench. See how the guys interact. Then sit on the glass. See how hard AJ Greer hits. Then sit all the way up top where we sit and see just plays unfold all the way from back behind Florida zone net, and kind of how the breakouts work and things like that. Because these are the players, and this is the team. We're going to look back when you and I are old and gray, saying, "Oh yeah, we remember. We were there for Matthew Tkachuk, and we were there for those cups and all that stuff." So, once again, we always say this is the golden era, and it's just crazy to look back at, kind of go down that list and just see that list and just be like, man, this really was a wagon of a team.
Yep. It's impressive to see and enjoy it, because, as we say, this team's going to be good for a long time, going to be a contender for a long time, and with 10 players signed at least through 2030, they figure to look very similar through the next number of years here. But again, there are 31 other teams trying to win the Stanley Cup every year. It is incredibly difficult to do what this team's already done. Just enjoy this special era of Panthers hockey, and we hope you enjoyed this edition of the Territory Talk podcast. We'll have more coming your way. Jameson, what's going to be what kind of themes are we looking at here over the next few episodes?
We're trying to get Samo on here for an interview. We're tracking him down.
Okay,
like we said,
efforting.
He's fast.
We're efforting him.
You and I have to put in better effort there to track him down. But hopefully getting him on here soon. Then we're going to review the defenseman. I think we'll probably squeeze defenseman and goaltending into one episode.
Makes sense.
Or maybe we give Bob his own episode and just talk about how great Bob is for a while. But we'll see. And then, of course, we're not that far ahead from starting to look ahead.
Yep.
Season previews aren't that far off.
We're sitting here on July 22nd. I'd say about we're maybe 5-6 weeks away from full-on season preview mode.
Getting crazy.
Yeah.
But we do have some more exciting stuff coming up in the Territory Talk universe. We can't reveal it now, but we got some exciting stuff coming up.
All right. Well, we'll be on the lookout for all of that. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Territory Talk podcast, presented as always by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. For Jameson Olive, I'm Doug Plagens. We'll talk to you next time.